Hey everyone, it's Jake here. Today I'm going to walk you through how I use Blender as a tool for AR and VR design. So, I'm going to start by saying what we're going to build today. First, we're going to build a video walkthrough of an AR prototype. This is using footage we've taken as well as 2D UI and putting them together. And then secondly, we're going to be looking at the VR scene inspection tools inside of Blender. I should probably start by saying why I use Blender over other tools, and I think this breaks down to what design is good for at its core, which is communicating things quickly. If we look at tools, on one end of the spectrum we have things like Figma and Sketch, which explain things really quickly in 2D, but you don't really get that spatial thinking. If we go over here, we have Unreal and Unity, which are really spatial, in-depth, and can explain ideas really well, but because of that, there's a big time sink involved. So Blender really meets in the middle and kind of has that spatial thinking, but allows that quick iteration time if you follow the steps I'm gonna outline here. So let's jump into it and start off with the AR video on how I created this. Let's start by shooting some AR footage. We're using an app called CamTrackAR, which is going to save us a few steps because it shoots video and tracks an AR at the same time. You can find the download link below. We're going to kick things off by opening the app and getting a good scan of whatever we want to take a video of. So making sure these grid lines are showing, setting a point with the bottom button below, and then setting an anchor point with the second from the bottom button. And this is really going to help us later on. Once we have a good solid track, we're going to step back and record our video. Once the video is recorded, we're going to jump over to the Files app, find the CamTrackAR folder, and you're going to notice 3 files. We're going to send those to whatever device we're using Blender on for easy access later. Alright, so now that we've shot our footage, we're going to go ahead and move over to Blender to bring our UI in. So the download link for Blender is below. Install Blender and you should see something like this. To give an overview, we have tools on the left, we have sections at the top, we have the outliner on the right with everything in our scene, and then we have this property panel on the left which is going to reflect whatever is selected. We also have hints at the very bottom to give us keyboard and mouse shortcuts. We're going to install 2 add-ons to help us today by going to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, searching Align to find Align tools, click this little checkbox, and then we're going to search Images and then install this one called Import Images as Planes. Go click this cube, click this light by shift clicking, and then delete them with the delete key, and delete this camera as well. So we're then going to import our UI by going to File, Import Images as Planes, find UI assets we have, select them, come over here to the settings and change material settings to emit, and then import images as planes. We're going to notice that these don't actually have the images shown. That's just because of the viewport mode we're in. So if we come up here to the top right, click Viewport Shading Material Preview, they should appear. So next up, we're going to put everything into position. We have 2 options for this. The first is using gizmos. So if I come over here and select Transform, as well as these Rotate, Scale, and Move tools, I can visually do this. The other option is to use keyboard shortcuts. So if I wanted to use R, I could rotate, and then press R and X to stay on the X-axis. This would rotate along the X-axis. So rotate this 90 degrees, and all of these rotate 90 degrees. And you can also type in 90, so RX 90 to rotate 90 degrees. We're just going to scale with the S key, so S4. And then we're going to come over here to this panel and we can set the actual parameters here. So location 0, 0, 0. And there we go, we have some UI. So we're going to notice there's a bit of a clipping issue here. Even though this is in front of this, it's not showing in front of it. So if we select this button here, come over to Material Properties, go down to Settings. If we select Blend Mode, Blend Alpha Hashed, it's going to fix this issue. And we're going to do this for all of these, just so we get the right idea of what's happening. All right, so next up, we're going to install an add-on to get some 3D assets, and we're going to be getting them from Sketchfab. You're going to have to create an account for this site, so go ahead and do that now. But instead of actually downloading all of these assets and installing them manually, there's a handy add-on, which is also in the description below. Go ahead and click this code button on the GitHub page, click download zip. It should download, and then go to File, Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, same as before, but instead of searching for it, we're going to click Install at the top right. Find that add-on, the Blender plugin master.zip, click it, install it, and make sure you install the zip and don't unzip the folder. You'll run into issues if you do that. And if we did that correctly, just type Sketchfab here to see that it was checked. We should be able to pull out this caret up here, this little triangle icon, and we should see Sketchfab as one of these options here. So you're gonna have to activate the add-on up here, put in your login information. Under the import section, we select search. We search for what we want, so searching ramen, and then click this image here, and it's gonna bring us all the options. I like this green one, low poly stylized ramen. It's nice and small as well. So we're gonna import this model. We're gonna get a little bit of a loader. It's gonna load, and you see in the outliner it appeared, but it's not in our scene. That's because it's actually way up here. So what we're gonna do is go to this property panel, set the location to 0, 0, 0, and set the scale to 1 for now. And there we go, it's in our scene. We're just gonna position this real quick. All right, and now we have a 3D ramen app. One thing we're gonna notice if we switch over to viewport shading render preview, the ramen is going to not have any lighting data. It's gonna be flat and dark. We're gonna wanna add a light to this scene. So if we press Shift A, light, go to sun, this is just gonna add some nice even lighting for us. We're also gonna wanna make sure that over in this render properties panel, render engine is set to Eevee. This is just the real-time engine for Blender, so we're not taking a really long time to render things. So next up, we're going to install an add-on to help us import that footage we took earlier. So we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons again, Install again. Find that footage from earlier. And there's going to be an add-on called Blender HitFilm Importer.py. Click Install Add-on. Make sure that this is checked. And if this is installed correctly, we can go to File, Import, HitFilm AR Tracking Data. Find that tracking data again, and there's another file in there that's an HFCS file. Click this blue button, and if installed correctly, we now have a AR camera in our scene, as well as that anchor we set earlier. And if this worked correctly, we click this little camera icon here, and nice, we have a virtual camera. One thing we're missing, you can probably notice, is the footage. So to import that, we're gonna make sure this camera is selected, click this green icon with the camera, come over to background, turn this on, add image, movie clip, open, and we're gonna find that footage we took earlier in the same folder as the other two files, open clip, and go over back to the material preview. It's gonna be pink, don't worry, we just have to skip to the first frame because there's no image data on the first frame 0 of the film. But we're going to change some of these settings down here to put the opacity all the way up and set frame method to crop. And there we go. We're now walking through our scene in full 3D. All right, so you might have noticed that we're kind of just walking through the scene and walking through things. We want to put these in position. So we're going to want to do one thing first. If you notice, we kind of want to group these together, but if we move these, they're all moving separately. What we have to do is parent them. So if we want this ramen, this button, and this UI all to be together, we have to parent. So click the button, click the ramen, and click the UI background last. Press Control P, which is going to set a parent, and then choose Object, Keep Transform. If we did that correctly, you should select the UI, and you should see it all kind of move together. We can do the same thing with this destination icon and the map. Control P, Object, Keep Transform. Next up, we're going to use that Align add-on we saw earlier by coming over to Item, seeing Align Tools down here, opening that. And what this does is you select two things or more, and everything aligns to the last thing you selected. So we're going to select this UI, select this empty point up here. It's anchor 0 in the outliner. You can also select that. And then choose Align Location over here in the Align tools and click All. This is going to very nicely kind of align it without doing that eye work of trying to figure out exactly where it is. So we're going to put this in position real quick. So that's how you place things in the world. As you can see, when you move the camera, they're going to stay locked in the world. But if you want things stuck to the camera, I'm going to show you how to do that now. So say we want this little map down here attached to the camera, kind of like Google Maps AR view. So we're going to select this map. We're going to come over here to Object Constraints, choose Copy Location, choose Target, choose AR Camera. This is kind of like parenting, but it's going to give us a little bit more control. We're going to choose Offset. And what this is doing is taking this object properties data of the location and adding it to the camera's location. As you can see, if we zoom out, it's kind of this blue line in relation to this. So if we set this back to 0, 0, 0, you can see it's going to follow the camera as it moves. And we're just going to move this in front of the camera a bit. And you can see the rotation's not great. We can also add another constraint here to copy rotation. Set it to the Y and the Z axis. And if we did this correctly, it should kind of stick to the world and not follow the camera exactly. And as we look up, it should look away. So let's see if that worked. So as we look up and to the right, the map just kind of stays there and out of view. So this is a nice emulation of that with just a few clicks. So if we wanted to render this out, we're going to notice an issue. If we come up here, render image, you're going to see that it only renders the UI. And to fix this, we're going to do some compositing. So we're going to do two things. First, we're going to come over to render properties, go to film, and turn on transparent. This is going to add a transparent background. And then we're going to come up to the compositing section up at the top, click Use Nodes, and we're going to add 3 nodes here with Shift A. First, we are going to add the movie clip. We're going to add scale, and we're going to add alpha over. We're going to connect these through all the image ones. Just connect this render layers image to this alpha over, and the alpha over image to the composite image. We're going to go over to this movie clip, click this little icon, and you should see our movie in this drop down here. We're going to change the scale to render size, crop. And what this is doing is basically taking the movie, putting it in the background, and then rendering the UI over top. So if we did this correctly, we should click render, render image, and there we go. It rendered together. So to render this as a video, we're going to come over here to the output properties. Which one? This one. Change the output location to where we want with this little file icon, and change file format to AVI JPEG. And then if we come up here to render, render animation, and you're going to see it render frame after frame after frame after frame until it's done. But this is kind of boring. It's pretty static. So let's add some animation to this. So come back to the layout section. We're going to scale up this button. So we're going to find a point where it's good to start animating. Say frame 160 as you get closer. We're going to find the scale of this, 0.72. And to add a keyframe, we need to be at the frame we want, hovering over this property, and then press I. It's going to turn yellow, and you see it adds a keyframe in here. And then whenever we select something else, the keyframes are going to hide. So this is only showing keyframes for what is selected. So say we want to come over to make this over 20 frames, frame 180. Change this again, it changes to green, meaning it's not keyframed. Press I, adds another keyframe. Come back here to our beginning frame, and we're going to choose a starting size. So let's say 0.35. It turns orange. That means it's changed but not set. If we come over here and go back a frame, it's going to reset on us. So what we have to do is press that I key again to actually set it. And once we do, it's going to change back to yellow. So we're going to see now it's set. So I just cleaned the things up a little bit. We might want to animate the opacity here, and you're not going to see a property for that over here. So to add that, we got to add a transparent shader to the material. That might sound like a lot of words, but it's pretty easy. So we're going to select this button, come over to shading. You're going to see these noodles. Come over to render preview just to preview it. And what we're going to do is add two nodes here. So Shift A, mix shader, Shift A, transparent shader. And we're going to put this transparent into shader and this BSDF into shader and the shader out. And what we're going to get is a slider for the transparency. This is basically taking a full transparent shader and a regular shader and saying, okay, we're making a transition between the two. So we're going to put this all the way down for transparent, all the way up for opaque. We're going to need to copy these two nodes, select the ramen since we want to animate the opacity there, and do the same thing. Take this BSDF into here, take the shader out into surface, and we're also going to get a shader for this. And if we come back to layout, we are going to be able to keyframe this by going down to the material properties, opening the surface section, and we're going to see a surface mix shader and this factor. This just means this is a simplified version of that shader view we saw earlier. So if we slide this, you're going to see that it's changes the transparency. So if we press I here, go to the frame where we want it fully opaque, just before the scale ends, change it to 0, press I, and if we press spacebar to play this, we're going to see that it animated nicely. There's a bit of artifacting here, but it's going to go away when we render it out. So same thing with the button. Go over to this FAC in the material properties, bring it all the way to up for transparent, go over to our end frame, bring it to 0 to be opaque, and there we go. Now if you really want to get fancy with animations, things like curves and all that, if you're into After Effects, come over to this animations panel, and you're going to see two views down here, one being the dope sheet and the other being the graph editor. If you don't see this graph editor, don't worry. Come over here to this drop down and choose graph editor, and it appears here. I just like this 2-up view to have keyframes on the left and dope sheet on the right. And you're going to see something familiar here, which are Bezier curves for the graph editor. You can edit easing and animation through here. And one thing we're going to note is this little icon here only shows selected. This is only going to show selected things. So once we unselect this, this is how you find everything else to animate. If things aren't showing, make sure to unclick this one. But there's some handy things in here. If we select a point and go to key, there's easing type with Control E, which is ease in, ease out, ease in, out. Interpolation mode, so how gradual it is, and then the handle type. So these three properties are going to give us most of the things that we've seen in After Effects and other tools. All right, so I'm just going to clean this up and I'll show you what it looks like as a final render. All right, so for the last part of our tutorial, we're going to keep this one pretty short and sweet. So we have the scene we built here by placing the UI elements we showed before. And what's new is this virtual environment. You can download it below in the Sketchfab link that I've uploaded. To view this in VR and kind of get an idea of scale and size, we got to make sure this apartment is set 1:1 scale. And then we have to enable VR support by going to Edit, Preferences, searching for VR, and then 3D View VR Scene Inspection right here. And if that did work correctly, we should have a VR tab here. Make sure a few settings here are set. So positional tracking, we need to turn that on. We need to set floor, and I'm going to turn on mirror VR session just so y'all can see kind of what I'm seeing in headset. So if we have Oculus open or Steam VR open, I have an Oculus link with a Quest here, this should just work. So we're going to click Start VR Session. And there we are. You're seeing what I'm seeing. And a cool thing about this is everything we update in scene here will update on the headset. So I can go ahead and press A, select everything, and move it around. And you can see it's being updated in the headset as I'm updating it. So that's it for today. Hope this is helpful. If there's anything else you want to learn about designing with Blender for AR and VR, let me know in the comments below. All right, thanks guys.